I'm Marinaro, the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. The big story yesterday, as far as soccer in Canada is concerned, is that 3 people were summoned to speak at the Heritage Committee. They did so via Zoom. The person that's going to join us on the podcast today was actually one of 2 reporters who were there live, and he's going to break it all down. 3 members were asked to speak. Who were they? We'll talk about it. We'll also talk about a wingback for CF Montreal out with an injury, not making the trip. A striker not making the trip either. We'll preview CF Montreal at Vancouver Whitecaps. That goes Saturday night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. The Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. I'm Marinaro, Jeremy Filosa, Gavino Di Falco, and our guest today, Elias Larati from the Northern Tribune. Coming up.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. CF Montreal Talk.
Here's the chance. They've got the goal. Absolutely incredible. Cameron Porter delivers the goal to send Montreal Impact into the CONCACAF Champions League semi-final.
The sickest CF Montreal podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And welcome to the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. Marinaro, Filosa, Larati, and Di Falco once again. Elias Larati of the Northern Tribune, welcome to the program. Welcome to the podcast. What's going on?
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the opportunity.
You're very, very welcome. All right. The reason why we're having you on, of course, is because yesterday you were at the Heritage Committee. You were there, in Ottawa, and 3 people were summoned to speak. Sean Heffernan, CFO of Canada Soccer, was one. Victor Montigliani, who is the vice president of FIFA, the president of CONCACAF, and former president of Canada Soccer, was the other. And also outgoing president Nick Bontis, who handed in his resignation in the last month. They were summoned to speak. They did so via Zoom. You were there once again, Elias. Talk to us about it.
Well, it was pretty crazy, pretty chaotic. It's not been a great situation. We finally got to hear from Nick Bontis. He was scheduled to testify earlier, and there was an unfortunate situation actually where for a year he was actually being harassed by someone who was dealing with mental health issues, and he had actually pressed charges against that person. The charges were filed, and unfortunately, before they actually went to court, the person ended up taking his own life, which is pretty much hit him really hard. So he had said that when he had in his opening statement. He also addressed the comment that he had made towards Christine Sinclair, which she had mentioned.
Elias, and I'm sorry to cut you off. If we can just backtrack for the benefit of everyone that's going to be watching who probably isn't up to date as to why Victor Montigliani, Nick Bontis, and Sean Heffernan had to speak yesterday. Put things in context, and then we'll get to that, okay?
So this started with what's called the CSB deal, the Canada Soccer Business Deal, okay? This is a deal back in the day where Canada, the men's team, wasn't doing very well, and TSN, Sportsnet, RDS were not really picking up the games. So they had to find a way for broadcasters to really show the games of the team. And that's basically how One Soccer was created, because there was not really anybody picking up these games, showing these games, because the team was doing very good. And back in, I guess in secret, they made this deal that now seems outrageous. It's $3 to $4 million a year that's coming out of the players' salaries, players' fees, that it's going to them. And that's been really the focal point. And the committee really wants to find out how this deal got made, how they did it, behind the backs of the players who were outraged. We saw what happened last year when the men's team was supposed to play Panama and Vancouver. They actually protested. And then again at the She Believes Cup in Orlando, Florida, they basically decided to strike for one day. Canada Soccer responded by basically threatening to sue every player personally, which forced them back to the pitch, because it doesn't make sense how these teams are doing extremely well. Men made the World Cup for the first time in 36 years. The women are coming off Olympic gold, coming off multiple World Cup appearances, and yet they keep slashing the budget. They're to a point where you can't even have a proper training session because there's not enough players, there's not enough technical staff, there's not enough coaches. So now the players are asking, hey, where is this money going? We want to know exactly every single financial detail, which is why the CFO, Sean Heffernan, was brought in. You had Nick Bontis, who was the current president before he resigned a few weeks ago. He was actually requested to resign by the 13 provincial members, and he actually spoke about that as well. And back on March 9th, the four major players, Christine Claire, Janine Becky, Quinn, Sophie Schmidt, were in the Heritage Committee talking about what happened. Christine made an unfortunate remark that Nick Bontis had said some insulting comments towards her, which is what I was basically referencing. So basically yesterday, he had a chance to come clean. He said, listen, I don't remember what I told her. I don't dispute it. And what I said was wrong. And I've actually reached out to her agent and her as well to apologize. And in regards to my resignation.
Pardon me, it was about a week ago that Christine St. Clair said that she was deeply offended that Nick Bontis supposedly said, what was Christine bitching about again?
That was actually on March 9th.
Okay.
March 9th. In the meeting on March 9th, she had come out and said, I had a meeting with Nick Bontis, and then he basically disrespected me. He said, what was Christine bitching about later in the meeting? And then he had addressed that comment yesterday in his opening statement.
Okay, so he apologized for whatever he would have said that would have offended Christine St. Clair. The Canadian soccer business deal, was that deal brokered by Victor Montagliani?
It was actually signed by, correct me if I'm wrong, probably this will be, I don't remember his first name. It was signed by the guy, his last name is Reed, who was the current president at the time. I think it was Steve or Frank Reed. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys.
Yeah.
And, this deal was signed without any approval from any of the players. And, one of the MPs who's been really on this is actually Mount Royal Liberal MP Anthony Housefather, who I've actually dubbed as the Pitbull because, he's one of the guys that's really been on them hard. He's been really, been engaged. There was a question yesterday asked about personal salary. And unfortunately, in these meetings, there's very small time constraints. So there's rounds of 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes. And there was a questioning time frame where he's like, I just want to know your personal basic salary. And it took about 10 minutes because they were trying to explain, hey, listen, we unfortunately, due to the organization that we work with, we can't disclose that. Bontis even came out and said, listen, I don't feel comfortable disclosing that. So, it's gone to a point where I even spoke with the NDP MP Peter Julian after the meeting yesterday. And I actually made a suggestion to him in regards to the Hockey Canada situation. When Hockey Canada went through their scandal, they basically cleaned house. They basically got rid of everybody. They hired a new board, new leaders. And I asked him, I said, listen, are we at a point where Canada Soccer needs to do that? Maybe Canada Soccer needs to just eliminate the entire board, start fresh, hire new board members. He said, listen, they have two avenues. They can do that, or they can literally be totally transparent, come forward and answer questions, but which they haven't done at all.
Yeah, that was something by Anthony Housefather, by the way, who started off very complimentary of Mr. Montagliani, very complimentary of Nick Bontis, and then he went to work on Victor Montagliani, really trying to force him to divulge his salary, to which he was trying to put into context that, at FIFA they have, and he was basically saying, this is not what I'm asking you. I'm asking you to divulge your salary, and he wouldn't want to divulge it. It was really something. It was grueling.
Yeah, it was pretty intense and pretty chaotic, to say the least. I've never experienced something like that before in my life before. So, I mean, for someone who my goal in life is to cover soccer and not cover politics, it's really
not fun.
No.
So anyway, he didn't divulge the salary. Nick Bontis didn't divulge his salary either. Then they were asked about, having a World Cup that was played on synthetic grass instead of natural grass. And Mr. Montagliani said that FIFA gives you the option to play on whichever kind of grass or turf you want, as long as it's approved, obviously. And then he was grilled about, this was the only World Cup that would be played on synthetic grass. And Mr. Montagliani went back to saying that, it's FIFA can tell you whichever, they don't mind. But was anything accomplished in all this?
Probably not, unfortunately. Like Julian had said, there hasn't been good testimony coming forward. They need to be fully transparent. They've been hiding, behind like their companies and their organizations and procedures and all that. I was actually surprised that Montaliani was actually able to testify because FIFA does have what's called a government interference rule. It did happen with 2 other African countries, and they were actually severely punished. And it was actually mentioned during the March 9th meeting that they felt scared to come to government because they thought that maybe FIFA would remove them from the World Cup. The women are expected to play the World Cup this summer in Australia and New Zealand. They do play Nigeria, Ireland, and Australia. So.
And by the way, getting back, it was Steve Reed who, by the way, after Victor Montagliani and before Nick Bontis, the Canada Soccer president, in between the two was Steve Reed. Jeremy?
Yeah, no, just listen, guys, from the outside, okay, let's attack this. I wasn't aware, and most of us were not aware of everything that was going on behind closed doors at that moment when they made that deal to give the rights to One Soccer for 10 years and $100 million, I think it was at that moment. Everybody was sort of happy. We now have a broadcaster. But you can ask Gavino. From day one, we thought to ourselves, I'm not sure this is a smart deal. I'm not sure they're going in the right direction. I'm not sure associating with One Soccer uniquely is the best thing for them. I'm not sure in 5 years they'll think that $100 million over 10 years is great. So it baffles me to think that, the people that were involved with this so closely thought at that moment that this would be a great deal for Soccer Canada and that nobody at that moment objected or said anything. From the beginning, I was
They took the best offer, though, Jeremy. Yeah. They took the best offer. Unfortunately, though, taking the best offer is one thing, and then realizing that people need to subscribe per month if they actually want to watch the game. If you want to grow the game in the country,
that's it.
It's hard. But it's a 10-year deal. Look at Apple TV. From what we're hearing, there's an out clause after 3, 4, 5 years. I'm not sure. But there's an out clause. I mean, when you make a 10-year deal and after 3 or 4 you realize this is not the best deal for us, there's got to be an out clause somewhere. Is there one? I haven't heard of it.
By the way, that deal actually has a clause to be extended another 10 years, this time going up to $4 million a year.
All right, guys, I don't think Canada Soccer was ready for the World Cup 2022. We saw even the jersey. Canada, they were the only country without a new jersey. Remember that. Yep. But I got a question for Elias. Do you see some light at the end of the tunnel for that story? Because it's a mess with the women's. It's a mess with the men's. Same thing. Where's that money from the World Cup? Are we going to see a slight of that money soon? What do you think about that?
It's really, really tough to say. The constituents are going to take the next 2 weeks off, and then they reconvene after. So it really, for now, it's really, I really wouldn't be honest what to tell you. I mean, it could get done. It could not get done. The women are playing France next week in the April window, and they said that if something wasn't resolved, that they wouldn't play. Wow. But I was actually at the game on Tuesday night at BMO, and I did speak to the PR person who's handling the team, and she said, "Oh, well, don't worry, the tickets are booked. Like we're planning to go." Like I even spoke to Bev Priestman the other day, and she said normally it should be okay, but we never know what could happen.
But Gavino, we know where the money went. The money's gone. It went. The second they landed in Qatar, boom. There's $10 million by FIFA. The money went to the players. The money went to staff, and the money went to the program. And I don't remember the name of the program. Maybe, Elias, you can enlighten me on this one. But it's the program so that family members could actually get to go to Qatar. Friends and family can get to go to Qatar. And I know of some people that actually went to Qatar, were able to benefit from that program because they were friends and or family of players that were playing in the World Cup. That money is gone.
Yeah, already. And the clubs are still waiting for their money, by the way. CF Montreal, I mean, this is going back a month, maybe a month and a half. We're still waiting for their money for the 5 players they sent to the World Cup. So I don't know what's going on there either. But guys, this is going to get resolved.
I believe I read somewhere that there was a bonus for the coach as well to qualify the team to get to the World Cup. I would.
But guys, unfortunately, if you want to bring this sport to another level, you'll have to bring those games, at least national games, when Canada's playing on a regular TV, on TSN or Sportsnet. Right now, I heard there's only 15,000 subscribers on One Soccer, so imagine it's tough. It's tough to sell this sport right now. You saw how many fans there were in Toronto last Tuesday because no promotion by regular cable and everything. Only 13,000 showed up. And we saw the popularity of Canada when the game were on Sportsnet and TSN on regular cable. How, all the country, they were behind this team and everything. So, guys, it's water and fire right now.
Elias, is that it for basically asking Victor Montagliani or Sean Heffernan or Nick Bontis to speak, or is there a chance that actually they're going to have to do this again?
I'm not 100% sure of that. I'm pretty sure they won't.
Yeah.
Me personally, I don't want to give my take. It's actually really interesting that we came from a situation where no one wanted to broadcast them, and now we're in a situation where we need to broadcast them in that many span of years. So, I mean, maybe someone needs to step up, like a TSN or a Sportsnet, and realize, hey, this deal needs to be done. We need to find a way to bring games to TSN, to RDS, to Sportsnet. That way, people can actually watch, and they don't have to pay. And I said this in our hit the other day in regards to the game. It was on a Tuesday night. The Raptors were playing at Scotiabank. Like, it's going to be very hard to really pack a BMO field when you have those events both going on at the same time.
Yep.
Well, I don't know how anyone's going to step up if they're locked into that deal.
They said, by the way, because actually we did hear from Earl Cochran, who is now the general secretary.
Yeah.
And he actually said that while the CSB deal is not a bad deal, it just needs to be reworked and redefined, and they need to find a way to make it better, basically.
All right. Okay. So it can be reworked and it can be redefined. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right. Look, soccer is still not where it should be in this country. And I know they made the World Cup in 2022. It's fantastic. The fact that they did make the World Cup, like we're what? We're since November removed of the World Cup. Are you feeling that buzz for soccer in this country that we should, following a World Cup qualification and a World Cup participation? The Canadians men's national team went to the World Cup in Qatar in mid-November.
Yep.
The tournament ended in mid-December. Here we are in the last day of March, January, February, March, 3.5 months. We're 100 days after the World Cup. When you go outside, do you smell soccer?
No.
When you watch TV, do you see soccer? When you listen to the radio, do you hear soccer? It's almost non-existent, guys.
Can you hear me, guys?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, One Soccer has the right to sell any game they want to any network that puts up enough money. Okay, they can accept or refuse. They've sold some of the World Cup qualifiers, as you can remember. The games were on national television, or not national television, but were on cable television. Now, where I point the finger at TSN and Sportsnet and RDS and TVA Sport is when it comes to soccer, they always wait till the last minute. All the other sports, NFL, CFL, Major League Baseball, all these deals are done years before. They already know years before which tournaments they're doing, which weekends. Every time it comes to soccer, they wait and see. Are we going to make it to the end? Now Canada's in the finals of the Nations League tournament, right? The games are going to be taking place in June. They're in the semifinals
in Las Vegas.
In Vegas, so they'll be playing Panama. They might have a chance to go to the finals. I have a suspicion that a week before that all starts, somebody's going to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, what are those games that are being played there? Is Canada? Do they have a chance to win? Yes. Okay. Can we have the games now?" It's like, guys, wake up and smell the coffee. Do you want this product? Yes or no? If you want it, it's accessible to you. Put the money down. Call One Soccer. Say, we want the games. We want the whole year. And this is how much we're willing to pay. And One Soccer is going to make a deal with you. Put up enough money. You were not there 3 years ago. So now what do you want? They don't belong to you. So if you want those games, you need to be aggressive. And stop waiting at the last minute, just like RDS and the World Cup qualifiers. Remember, the first 3 games, they didn't have them. Then they woke up And they said, "Oh, people are watching this. People are interested. Okay, let's go now. Let's carry the games."
I understand the players who want major money, major sponsors like MasterCard, Visa, and Heineken. But right now, when the games are on One Soccer, there's maybe one or two sponsors, and they are, there's not a lot of audience or watching those games. Seriously, how many of players, not players, but fans are watching those games from a Curacao against Canada? Say, how much are we? How many are we? 5,000, maybe 3,000? I don't know.
I get back to what I said before, right? You have to build a culture for soccer in this country for people to want to watch. Here's the reality. When you watch television and you watch sports TV, all right, is soccer the number one story? No. Is it the number two story? No. Yeah. Is it the number three story? No. Is it the number four story? No. I'm going to take it a step further. When you listen to the radio, do you hear interviews from the soccer teams, from the professional teams in Canada, from the ones in the MLS or the ones in the CPL? Do you hear from coaches? Do you hear from players? No. You want to know why? Because many of these, they're not even sending reporters anymore. So if the reporters can't get the clips, then those who are in studio and don't have the clips, to say, you know what, it's not important. We're not going to talk about it. Unless Canada Soccer gets together and basically has, with all the entities, gets together with all the broadcasters, TV, radio, and they go on. I almost feel like they have to go on a tour to raise awareness, to try and sell the culture. Unless everyone gets on board, this thing, we're going to go round and round and round and round, and we're never going to get anywhere.
No,
it's a sad story because a lot of fans jumped on the bandwagon last year, last fall, last summer because of that run and everything, the World Cup, and now it's basically, guys, ground
back
zero
to square one.
Back to square one.
Yeah, I have two things to say, by the way. Number one, I remember when CBC Sports was showing the Canada games. But here's the thing. There was a tournament that the women were playing. And I remember they were showing the games 3 hours after the game had actually happened.
Delay.
Who wants to watch the game on a delayed 3-hour feed when the game already happened? That doesn't make sense to me. And number two, I actually reached out to Canada Soccer because I was trying to go to Curacao for that game. And I actually got an email the night before saying, listen, we found out that there's going to be no match day -1 press conference. And the host actually decided not to even host a post-game press conference for the visiting team. I've never heard of a hosting country not having any media availability for a team.
Elias, I'm going to take it a step further. All right, guys. And Jeremy, you've seen this, and so have you, Gavino.
Yep.
There are members of the media, whether it's radio, television, or print, that use their respective platforms to tell you that they didn't watch the game, to tell you that they're not going to the game, to tell you that they don't have time for a game that's going to finish 0-0, to tell you that, they find the sport boring, to tell you that there's too much faking and too much diving and too much this, and this is the reason why they don't watch. We're trying to sell a sport in our country, and many bash it. It's unacceptable, guys. It's unacceptable.
It's sad. Well, guys, I'm just telling you, I've been covering Canada for the last 4 or 5 years, and I was expecting, with all that money from the World Cup and new sponsors and everything, that things would have been improved, especially with the communications and PRs. Haven't seen that in the last 3 months,
guys. Let me tell you this, okay? Yeah. Last week before the Curacao game, we get an email. John Herdman is speaking. If you need to be on the Zoom, write to us. Click here, write to us, and we'll send you the password. So we're waiting. We're writing. We need the password. Need the password. We're getting closer to the time of the press conference. We get no news. To find out the day later, after a lot of frustration, that the link in the email was not working. It was going into an email that no longer existed. It didn't function. And I'm thinking to myself, how does this happen all the time? Now, we've heard that Richard Scott is actually leaving Soccer Canada. He was the head of communications at Soccer Canada for years and years and years. He's leaving. I don't know for what reason. Has he been dismissed or has he just decided to move on? I have no idea. But money needs to be injected here. and professionals need to be hired in order to get this thing out there, because right now we have an awesome product. We have an amazing team, great talented players doing an extraordinary job. For me, Team Canada right now is the best soccer country in CONCACAF. I don't care what the standings say, okay? They're better than USA. They're better than Mexico, and we can't find a way to get that out there. I was watching RDS last week for the after the Honduras game. I was watching the Sport 30 bulletin. It came on at the 23rd minute. 23rd minute. The whole thing lasted 40 seconds. No post-game comments, no analysis, nothing. And at some point in time, guys, things need to start changing, because it's disgusting, to tell you the truth.
Well, you know what's going to happen. You know what happens in this market, right? You talk about the Canadians, and then after you finish talking about the Canadians on your bulletin, you talk about the Canadians again, and then when you finish talking about them, you talk about the Canadians again.
Because for me, there's nothing more insulting than that. That's saying our audience is stupid. This is all they understand. But the reality is, if you go back 20 or 25 years in the Quebec market, when the Alouettes were doing great and the stadium was full, and we had Calvillo and we talked about them, and we had the Expos, people followed the team, and we had the Canadians, and we followed Formula One with Schumacher, Villeneuve, and we followed the boxing with Boutte, with Pascal, and all these other sports, and we had AC Milan coming to Montreal, playing soccer games. Those were the years. People followed everything. You didn't need to cram everything into a corner and say, well, now let's talk about Chris Cherney and how good he's doing on the fourth line. Because honestly, that's irrelevant. But we have great stories here. All we got to do is tell them, and people will listen, and people will jump on board.
Before you tell them, you have to work.
Yeah, you need to invest time and money to educate people.
All right, okay.
Right now, we're doing the bare minimum.
All right, let's move on if we can, guys. CF Montreal is going to be in Vancouver Saturday night, 10:30 p.m. is the start. Lassi Lapalainen doesn't make the trip.
Yeah, he's not there. He was not 100% for the last game. We'll see if this is what we were told on Wednesday morning. By the way, I repeat, talking to the coach on Wednesday morning for a Saturday night game does not make any sense. We saw what happened with Kamal Miller the last time. So, okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's hope that gets resolved. Now,
so why doesn't the coach talk to you on Friday?
We have no idea. We've been asking for it. The team is saying that they're going to look into it. I just want to tell you this. When Mauro Biello was coaching the team, he spoke every day. When Remy Gard came in twice a week, Tuesdays and Fridays, and then we had Wilfred Nancy once a week, Thursdays. Yeah. Now we have Hernan Losada once a week, Wednesdays. Every time a new coach comes, it gets worse.
Yeah, but it's Jeremy. It's because the organization is extremely popular. Everyone's buying the season tickets. Everyone's buying the tickets. Everyone's watching the games.
I've covered hockey, baseball, football. I've covered a million sports. I've never heard of a sport where the coach speaks 4 days before the game and doesn't speak until the game happens. Because then we have issues where we're communicating bad information like we did for Kamal Miller. It doesn't make any sense. It needs to change. Now, they're telling me they're working on it. Let's hope that happens, because, if the Montreal Canadiens coach talks 10 times a week, 10, he meets the media 10 times a week. And
so I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. I don't want to be mean here, okay? We're working on it. We're working on what? Before the season starts, hey, coach, you talk Tuesday, you talk Friday. Hey, coach, you talk Wednesday, you talk Friday. Like we're working on
it. Tony, I bring it up at least once a week with them, and they're basically telling me, like, we know, stop talking about it, okay, but now we're in week 6 of the season.
I know, but hold on a second. But I don't get the whole working on it. It's not a big process here. You have to send a text message or place a call, or when he comes into work, say, we'd like you to speak on Fridays. I mean, I don't
know, guys. Maybe it's going to change in a couple of weeks when Montreal is going to play many games at home. Maybe. We'll see.
Or maybe they're telling us it's complicated at Olympic Stadium. It'll be easier to do once they get to neutral A.
Could very well
at the same time, I mean, you can't wait till week 10 to start doing things right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Maybe they figure if you talk on Fridays, you're divulging, you're You're
some
divulging some
tactics and some
information
players. Of
Do
course.
you
Going into
remember during camp they were scared to divulge this and divulge that? The first 3 games of the season, they scored 0 goals and lost all 3. So come on, what is it that you're hiding? Are you gaining anything from this? Prove to me that you are. Anyways, besides the point, let's get back to Lassie. Lassie's not going to be there this weekend. That's what they told us. But the most interesting part is when Hernan Losada said he really liked Lassie on the right-hand side. He says he can play on the left, but he really liked him on the right-hand side and said maybe we can also use him as a winger or even as a striker on the right-hand side.
Was it about time? It was about time. It was about time, guys. I'm not a big fan of Lassie on the left.
Me neither.
I think his natural position is a winger. So let's see. Aaron Herrera is going to play on the right, and Choinière right now is the best man on the left side.
Okay,
Case closed. Case closed.
What I'm saying right now is, guys, this roster right now is unbalanced. Okay, we have Lassie belongs on the right. So let's say Lassie stays on the right from now on, and then we have Herrera that can play on the right, and we have Zach Brault-Guillard that can play on the right. But who is our left back? There are no left backs. And now if Lassie becomes a striker, all of a sudden you got 6 strikers on the team.
Kamal Miller's played it before.
He has. It's not ideal.
Well, it's not ideal. Olivier Renard likes Kamal Miller better as a center back than he does as a left back. Okay.
So right now you have 7 center backs. 7. Okay. But you don't have one single real left winger, or call him a...
Maybe Robbie Torkelson's going to be that guy on the left side. I know it's not his natural position, or maybe a Campbell, but something has to be done, guys. Maybe Quizera is the answer, but he's not healthy right now.
He's hurt.
Torkelson is also a left-footed center back. You're right, but listen, there's 3 players who are more comfortable than the rest on the left side. Okay,
that's it.
Quizera, Torkelson, and Kamal Miller. Now, if none of them are a left back, well, then you need to go out and get a left back. I mean, it's not complicated.
And the window transfer is not finished yet, huh, guys? Another 3 weeks, 3 weeks and a half. So we'll see if Ronald's going to have something, because we'll have to wait, guys.
Yeah.
You have to wait in Europe right now. The season's not over. Some teams are battling to stay in the first division, so we'll have to see maybe at the last minute to acquire a player.
But they probably thought that it wasn't, out of all the positions, they obviously thought it wasn't necessary because they're most comfortable in a formation which is a 3-4-1-2 or a 3-4-2-1. Having said that, me personally, for what it's worth, here in my basement in Villa Sal, okay, I take a look at the players they have, okay, and if they would add a left back, I think they set up well in a 4-2-3-1. If they would add a left back, I'll take it a step further. If Kamal Miller, they would ever put him at left back, I think you can still set up in a 4-2-3-1.
But they don't want that. They've said it clearly that this roster is built to play with 3 center backs. So they're not going into a formation where they have 4 guys at the back. So starting from there, okay, what do? You had Gutierrez, who was let go by Vancouver. He's a Canadian international. He's a left back. Toronto picked him up. I don't know if Montreal was interested. I don't know if they were in the mix.
I don't understand, sir. Why don't you pick up a center back that would be comfortable playing in a 4-man back line? Because basically what's happening is that whether the coach is Losada or whether the coach was Nancy a year ago, basically Olivier Renard has a vision of how he wants to see this team play. And because ultimately he can acquire whatever he wants, right? So if he wants to acquire a center back who's comfortable in a 4, then you have the option that you can play 4. And maybe Renard wants to play 3 all the time in the back. And by the way, if that's his vision, it's okay. They had a lot of success with it a year ago.
But Tony,
guys, there's too many players right now who are battling at the same position. Zach Brault-Guillard, same thing. Gabriele Corbo, you made his acquisition last week. Is he going to play somewhere near? If you always play Waterman, Camacho, and Miller, when is he going to play? Same thing with Zach Brault-Guillard. Is he going to be like a super sub for all year? Don't forget that he told us at training camp, I don't want to be a sub anymore. So...
he said if they don't have a role for me as a starter, I want out. So
his role has been like diminishing as years go on. I remember 3-4 years ago, he was starting almost every single game, And then a couple years went by, he started playing half games. Then they had to put him on the bench. Then he was coming in as a sub. So
Who's that?
Zach Brogier.
Zach Brogier.
Zach Brogier, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, guys, for me right now, they have certain positions where they have too many players, and there are certain positions where there's nobody. Now, you can live with when you're playing that position, but again, it's not his natural position. Tony, you're talking about like jumping over 15 loops to solve one problem. You want to play with 3 center backs? Get yourself a bona fide left wing back, and let's move on, please.
Yeah, no, I hear you. All right, okay, guys. An ending. Vilsain doesn't make the trip either. He's out with an injury.
Yeah.
Just to mention it, I mean, he hasn't played thus far this season. I would imagine. Hopefully, he comes back and we'll see him in those games versus Vaughan or with those Canadian Championship games.
Yeah. Probably no Kyoto to start the game because he just started 2 straight games with Honduras.
Yeah.
One in midweek.
So coming back, probably Sami Piet with Victor Wanyama in the middle of the pitch, Herrera on the right side. And at position of forward, it's going to be interesting between Sunusi, Mason Toy, or the hero of the last game. Maybe Chino 04 is going to have a start. I want to see him. I think he deserves a start. Big man, 6'4", 6'5", and Herrera coming back in the lineup. I just want to see those crosses from the right side and to have a big, huge target against Vancouver. Vancouver, who hasn't won this year. Two losses, 3 ties, but they're involved in the CONCACAF Champions League. For Montreal, it's 3 games on the road, no points, no goals this season.
If Kyoto's not going to start, I like to see Olfer start. I think Sanusi's had his opportunities thus far. I like to see Olfer start a game, and maybe Mason Toy coming off the bench.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll see if they use 1 striker or 2. I think that's the big question. Are they going to have 2 attacking midfielders, or are they going to have just 1 and go with 2 strikers? I think that's basically the only question mark we have for this weekend's game, unless something happens unforeseen.
Some key injuries for the Whitecaps as well, guys, but Gold and Dahome are there.
Yeah. Yes, but Cordova's your big the big threat. He's out 4 to 6 weeks. He's really the big threat on Vancouver. They're going to have to rely on White. White is not very good, not very clinical, so this is a game that if they go out there and play the game that they are supposed to play, they can do something.
White was pretty clinical a year ago, and I think that Gold is excellent. Personally, I think he's excellent.
He's a good player. He just needs good players around him to be able to finish up all the plays that he sets up.
They desperately need a win. I'm talking about Vancouver. Last week, 23 shots. I think 10 on target against a good team from Minnesota who was playing at home. So, yes, they scored only 1 goal. But, guys, 23 shots. Il va faire chaud dans la cuisine, like we say in French. But I expect Montreal to maybe have a tie on the road this weekend.
A game that we played on synthetic grass, to which Montreal, of course, obviously is comfortable because they train on the synthetic grass at the Olympic Stadium and also have it available to them when they'll end up going to their training facility, which, anyway, they're used to synthetic grass, put it that way. All right, guys, for Gavino Di Falco, Jeremy Filosa, and Elias Larati of the Northern Tribune. Thanks for joining us today, Elias. We really appreciate it. It is the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk. You can follow us on our YouTube channel. Subscribe. It's absolutely free. And follow us on Twitter at SickPod, CFMTL. Have a good day.
Ciao, ciao.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast, CF Montreal Talk on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.